Hey everyone, welcome back to the CyberHub Engage podcast, our Friday wrap up. It is Friday, December 20th, 4 days before Christmas, 2 days before Hanukkah, 6 days before Kwanzaa, which means if you're listening to us right now, you're either on your way to the airport to fly somewhere, or if in someone else's case, you're doing all the airport runs to pick up all the family that's coming into town. Either way, for the next 15-20 minutes, Dan and I are going to try and summarize this week's cyber news and keep you entertained on your journey with your family. Thank you for tuning in. We'll be right back with this brief message from our sponsor, and then we'll get right into our Friday wrap-up segment. Hey friends, want to talk to you guys about our new sponsor PlexTrac and its founder Dan DeCloss. So Dan DeCloss founded PlexTrac after 15 years of fighting with reporting and vulnerability management tools as a penetration tester and CISO. Dan knew that the best red teams not only needed a way to produce good, consistent reports quickly, but also wanted to be able to generate and catalyze the success of the organization they work with. That's why PlexTrac went beyond customizing Word and PDF reports to become a purple teaming platform. Through a central interface, red teams are able to report issues, blue teams are able to remediate them, and the CISO gets an overview of everything that's going on so he can report it up to his board, his stakeholders, and anyone involved in the organization on a consistent basis. As a CyberHub Engage listener, you get the opportunity to try PlexTrac for absolutely free for 1 month. No contracts, no credit cards, no risk, none at all. Simply go to plextrac.com/cyberhub. Again, that's plextrac.com/cyberhub. PLEXTRAC, no K in plextrac.com/cyberhub to claim your free month free now. Make sure you support our friends at PlexTrac. They have a great platform for all of you that are pen testers and red and blue teams. Make sure you check them out again. plextrac.com, no K in plextrac.com/cyberhub. So everyone, welcome back. Dan, welcome back on the Friday wrap up, buddy. How's it going?
Hey, doing well, James. Thanks for having me.
It's awesome to have you back in the studio. It's I can't wait to actually be physically in the studio with you, like same time zone kind of deal, you know, maybe with a scotch or an espresso. I don't know. I mean, there's just so many options. It's the Friday before Christmas, which is always, I think, the craziest time of year, right? It's when it's the last working day of the year for a lot of people because they go on this extended vacation. It's family flying in, family flying out, you know, kids, in-laws, parents, tough time of year. And before we get into our holiday tips, which is what we're going to talk about towards the end of the show, I kind of want to take everyone away from what they're looking at and remind them of how different cybersecurity is this week, thanks to one group of people, and that's the Maze ransomware group.
Yeah.
And everything that's gone on this week and over the last few weeks has kind of been a buildup. Dan, how is Maze, from a technological perspective, how is it different from other ransomwares?
Yeah, you know, I mean, from the way that they get in is still fairly similar, right? They're going to come in, you know, Maze is going to get dropped via some kind of exploit kit, you know, or somebody, you know, downloading it via an email and clicking on it. So like it's still very much the Trojan type of execution. But, you know, what's interesting is just the way in which it's now being used, you know, from the fact that like, hey, not only are we going to ransom you for you to get your files back, but we've already stored our own backup copy of these. And if you don't, then we're going to just send them out to the world as if it's a standard breach, you know. So definitely kind of upping the game from a ransomware perspective.
It's very interesting because they're brazen. And about a few weeks ago, when the city of Pensacola went through the terror attack there on the naval air base, on the naval station in Pensacola, that was on Thursday, and then on Saturday we had the ransomware attack, which the Maze folks came out and said, you know, we didn't intend it to be there. I'm like, you've got to be living in a cave somewhere to not know that there was a shooting in Pensacola. and that all the federal authorities were there on hand to deal with that terror attack on base, to launching that ransomware, to blatantly saying, listen, we're good guys. I don't know if you saw that, Dan, but they came out and they told Bleeping Computer, we're good guys. We're not attacking, 911. We're not attacking hospitals. We're going after people with money. And, it is the most fascist thing I've ever seen. It really does change the ransomware game. Have you been taking calls on this? Are people a bit more concerned with it? Do you see an increase in vulnerability management because of Maze? Is it leading practitioners to behave differently based on your observation?
I haven't seen anything directly yet. But I think that the fact that now they're starting to actually expose people's data if they don't pay the ransom, I think we're going to see a huge uptick in a more keen awareness on ransomware. Ransomware kind of had this huge surge, and then you kind of goes out of the news, and now I think we're really going to see a new uptick in 2020 with this kind of new philosophy, so to speak, from the ransomware providers, where it's like, yeah, hey, if you don't pay the ransom, you don't get your files back, but everybody else now gets your files. So that's pretty.
The technological advancement of them being able, what they just did yesterday and the day before, where essentially they told the insurance company out of Canada, Andrew, I forgot the name, the Andrew Insurance Company, I think it was. Sorry, I spaced out the name. They're Canadians. It doesn't really matter, but for the sake of this conversation, we'll just keep it at that. I love how everyone's smiling here on set too. They're just like, yes. But the way they're actually taking the files, they know exactly how much data is there. They have the usernames. They're putting it out there to say, listen, we've not only seen your data, we have your data. We've done our data analytics on it. We know what's in there. We know how much is in there. We know what's going to be painful for release for you, and we know what's not. That's a new level of sophistication from a ransomware perspective, is it not?
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's for the early days of ransomware, it was purely like a smash and grab job, right? I'm going to get in, I'm going to find who's going to pay the $300 in Bitcoin or whatever, and just get a bunch of money. Now, this is definitely taking it to a new level where they have the means and the mechanisms to do the data analytics, start to highlight what they can and can't, or what they may find more valuable to expose. So it's definitely upping the game from the ransomware perspective. And, who knows, the actual people behind it, but definitely people that have a little more, expertise. It's not just something that they're going to, not just some, crime group that's going to download this and get, get it onto people's machines just to make a quick extra buck. There's definitely a new level of sophistication for sure.
In your previous role as a CISO, looking at Maze, what would you do differently in your organization, or what kind of alert would you put out, or what would you tell your team, kind of as seeing as how these guys, as modus operandi has really changed?
Yeah, I think I would start to focus a little bit more on threat intelligence as to like, okay, who are the people that they are targeting, and try to see, do we fall into this group, and how close could we be to getting becoming a target of choice for this type of ransomware? From the ransomware perspective itself, it's a great opportunity, to remind everybody that ransomware is the same kind of techniques and tactics that any kind of more advanced threat is going to produce from a breach perspective, right? So they use the same tactics and techniques. So from the cybersecurity perspective, you should treat ransomware. And being able to prevent ransomware is a good exercise in just preventing breaches in general, right? Because it's got to get in the same mechanisms and vectors. They're going to do very similar things in terms of lateral movement, right, and propagate through the network. So it's kind of another kind of wake up call to say like, hey, how good are our defenses against attack simulation and breach simulation? Are we doing that in our environment to make sure that we've got those potential vectors plugged up so that that we won't be suspect to or fall victim to this type of attack?
So let's kind of, if we look at this whole kind of maze thing, it's really, you're right. It's really changed the way we kind of look at ransomware. If you're dealing with, your CEO, your CFO, your general counsel who are reading the headlines for Maze, and they're calling you as a CISO and they're saying, "Hey Dan, what are we doing about this?" What would be some of the discussion points you would do? Especially right around the holiday time where, people kind of want to check out of work, but you see something like this and you go, "Are we going to have Christmas Eve ruined because we're going to go through something very similar to this?" How would you explain the Maze group to the upper management to kind of essentially let them know what you're dealing with?
Yeah, I mean, I think we put them in the same category as like a sophisticated attacker, right? And so how are we protecting ourselves against a sophisticated target of choice attack, right? Where that's like, it's not, we're not on the chopping block from the low hanging fruit. Someone is actually, directing this at us, and how are we preventing against it? So things like email filtering, and making sure our email gateway is filtering on anything that could be suspicious and having downloads and all those, kind of those standard practices. And then having an EDR, kind of an advanced firewall, and endpoint detection and response agent on our endpoints, so that we have some of the higher level protections there from a heuristics-based perspective, process level protection. Those are the things that are really going to help stop the initial vector. And then, as we start to propagate out from that, say we do get infected, we have backups stored offline that are current, and we have an isolated network. I mean, those are the things that it's the things that we will continue to harp on from a security fundamentals perspective. But if you have some of those things in place, I mean, having, I saw an article today about, what has been the biggest bane of an existence for pen testers, and largely it's network segmentation, right? I mean, isolation of your network and the subnets, and your crown jewels are isolated to the highest fortified that it can be, is very important. and they're solid principles that we need to continue to remind people. Ransomware keeps us on our toes from that perspective, because it's not every day that we're going to get a target of choice, a sophisticated advanced threat actor coming in, but we're definitely at risk for a ransomware attack, right? And so we prevent ransomware attack very similar to how we would prevent an advanced persistent threat type of attack as well.
So looking and kind of, let's move a little bit from ransomware. Like I started this episode by saying, we're a few days away from Christmas, a few days away from Hanukkah, a few days away from Kwanzaa. Family comes in, or you're leaving and heading towards family. Either way, it's that crazy time of year, and you're going to have a bunch of people in your house trying to use your Wi-Fi, kids, devices you don't really know. What are some security tips we can share with our listeners on good cyber hygiene over the holidays?
Yeah, so I think definitely enabling your guest network, if you haven't already, from your Wi-Fi. Most modern Wi-Fi, home small office home Wi-Fi's allow for a guest network. Put your guests on there, right, and isolate off those devices that you don't know or don't trust, and kind of have a zero trust mentality within your house in general, but definitely in the holidays if you're bringing people in. Enable that guest Wi-Fi. Don't let them onto your network. Probably always a good time, kind of like the way you might change your batteries in your smoke alarm. It might be time to go ahead and, once everybody leaves, just do a good hygiene scrub on your passwords, and just kind of go through all your passwords and make your routine changes. It's kind of is a good time to do that, is because it's kind of something you can remember. We change our smoke alarms and our batteries in our smoke alarms every time the clocks fall forward or fall back, and so you can kind of set your schedule to that too, from changing your passwords, and that just kind of helps prevent some of the other things that we've seen in the news as well, like with the Ring attack, and how creepy some of those things can be too.
Let's talk a little bit about that Ring attack, because it's kind of sent people through shockwaves, and I wasn't shocked. I'll just say this. I've been called on enough sextortion cases of people who don't cover their webcams. So I'm just like, it's inevitable that this was going to happen with Ring. And I don't know if that was necessarily a Ring issue or just a hygiene issue from the person who set up that camera in the bedroom of their children. What can you tell us a little bit more about that specific attack, that specific issue? Because I'm not as privy to it as others have been. I've kind of ignored that story almost.
Yeah, no, I followed the story in the news. I mean, I'm not privy to anything behind the scenes, but I mean, from my perspective and what Ring has stated is that it was a password reuse issue where these people had, deployed Ring into their house and set the same password as a password they used for another service that had been part of a breach. So that password had been compromised, and someone had uncovered it and was attacking, the Ring service and was able to log in and now had access to their household cameras. And this type of camera also allowed for speakers, and so this attacker was actually talking to a 10-year-old, I think it was an 8 or 10-year-old girl in her bedroom, right? So I mean, it's very creepy stuff, right? I mean, in terms of like, if you're a parent, like you definitely, you put a camera or kind of it's meant to protect and make sure that they're safe, and here you are now introducing pedophile or pervert or whoever, I mean, somebody to get into their bedroom. But it allowed Ring to actually, they sent out a memo that basically is teaching people about password security and password hygiene. So in that respect, it's very good, and I think Ring had a good response. They're trying to make sure that people don't believe that it's Ring's fault, and I don't think, from what I understand, it's not their fault. It's definitely one of those issues. There could be some other things there, but from what we know, that's what happened.
It's fascinating for me because as we say, we create a smart home. Someone was at my house earlier this week, and they go, "Surprised you don't have any smart devices in your house." And I go, "Yeah, I'm kind of gonna stick to a key on my front door, and I don't need Alexa telling me or reminding me of things. Well, that's what my phone's for. That's what Bluetooth speakers are for." And I mean, how do you start securing a smart home in this age of, like you said, password reuse, the fact that there's constant breaches, and the fact that a lot of times, these networks aren't updating on their own. People don't click on the auto update. It doesn't come standard. So you've got a vulnerability that someone can take complete advantage of. What are some of the things that the average person should know and do?
Yeah, I mean, I think isolating them off, like we kind of mentioned before, even with your guests, but having all your smart devices on a separate network where they're not going to be, touching some of your other, more sensitive machines or your laptops, or things that are going to be, housing your sensitive information, for your personal family. It's hard. It's a hard balance between stuff like the cameras and the monitoring devices, because yeah, those are meant to be security related devices. But I mean, if you haven't locked those down from just your account on their service, then you are opening yourself up to exploitation. And that's exactly what happened in this instance. So I mean, definitely setting strong passwords and different passwords. If you're going to do those kind of services, definitely setting those strong passwords, using two-factor authentication as well for logging in. You should just in general have two-factor authentication enabled on all your services. But I think as we kind of continue to venture into this smart home mentality, we've all got to be very careful and prudent about who we trust, and some of the younger vendors are it's going to be harder to know who we should trust. Now, Ring is a known name, and but again, I think that's more on the end user's perspective, safety precautions than Ring themselves. So it's tough. I mean, there's that balance between the cool new tech and how do we make sure we're safe and secure and have our privacy as well.
So kind of going back to holiday safety, for those traveling through airports, train stations, buses, if people still use those, what are some of the security tips you would encourage people to do, especially with children around this time of year?
Yeah, I typically turn off Wi-Fi. I try to do everything over the data connections. I'll turn off Bluetooth. Some of those things where if you don't need the service turned on, just turn it off. I mean, there's just a higher risk of if you haven't updated your phone or something like that, you're definitely at risk for some of those attacks. I always tend to use my personal hotspot at my phone as a personal hotspot and connect through the internet through that. I don't connect to public Wi-Fi's just as a principle. So definitely people should be conscientious of that. And only connect if you are going to connect to one that has a password and that you have. I don't save Wi-Fi passwords in my settings, so that I always have to re-enter the password and I know which AP I'm connecting to. Right, if you have a public network and you've saved it in your list of known networks. Somebody could exploit you that way by just saying, "Hey, I'm this open and free, wireless network that you didn't have to enter a password in for, and now I can man in the middle of your traffic." So just always be careful. It's just out of habit, probably not connect to public Wi-Fi.
I will say this to all the parents: pay attention to your kids this time of year. One large uptick we see this time of year is pedophiles are generally alone. They're targeting kids who don't like being around the family for holidays. So that niece, that nephew, that cousin, that person who's in the room or in the basement or sitting somewhere just tied into their device, just monitor that person, monitor their activity. Something I was reading earlier today, I sent a kind of like a cyber newsletter to my daughter's school for the holidays right before it. And it went directly to the parents. And one of the things I wrote in there for the parents was, hey, if your kid's alone and not with the entire family and they're on their device and they're playing a game, who are they talking to in that game? Mm-hmm. What other kids are online on Christmas Eve playing a game? Not many, right? So They're probably talking to someone who's out there trying to take advantage of a situation. I think that's really important this time of year. A police chief friend of mine had indicated that this time of year they see an increased activity in pedophiles online through different ways to try to get kids. Anything from offering them gifts to getting them away from noisy, annoying aunts, uncles, grandpa, grandmas, and whatnot. So just for our listeners that are out there, this is another thing to worry about outside of all the other stuff like dealing with your crazy left-wing uncle and your aunt pinching your cheeks and you're 37 years old.
Yeah, no, and you can never be too vigilant and you can never be too safe, and precautions are always important. One other thing I forgot to mention on the kind of protecting yourself and your home, definitely using a service like OpenDNS where you're not you have kind of that filter from the home perspective of resolving good traffic, and you can kind of block and be proactive on blocking some of the traffic that might be bad using a service like OpenDNS. And even those like Disney Circle or some of those other apps that can help monitor the traffic that your kids might be conducting while they're like you said, Christmas Eve they just got this new app or this new toy. It can never be too safe.
Absolutely. Dan, I want to say thank you for coming on the show today. I look forward to speaking to you in 2020, next year, as we just say. So thank you for everything. We really do appreciate it. Merry Christmas, I'll say to you and your family.
Thank you. Yeah, you as well. Happy Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, all the holidays, maybe a fun and relaxing time for you as well.
Thank you very much. So, folks, if you're listening, thank you so much to Dan, and he's the CEO and president of PlexTrac. Over the weekend, over the holidays, they have a great promotion for our CyberHub Engage listeners. You can go to our website at cyberhubengage.com or go to plextrac.com/cyberhub to get a free 1-month trial of their platform for their blue and red team. Absolutely great platform. We've gotten a lot of positive feedback on it, so people are really enjoying it. Dan's done a great job in building an amazing product, those for all of you practitioners. So if on Christmas Eve you're the adult that wants to hide, download PlexTrac, play around with it. Get the job done for you. Make sure you subscribe and tune in tomorrow morning, for our very special episode with the Director of Cyber Operations out of the University of North Georgia, the #1 school in the country, folks, in the NSA Codebreaker Challenge. And for a exclusive, it's really a national exclusive. We sat down with Dr. Bryson Payne, and we got first look at the FBI UNG threat survey results that came out from an exclusive survey done by the FBI and the University of North Georgia of 1,600 businesses in Georgia, and the cybersecurity threat landscape on those businesses and what they view as being their biggest threats. That's all going to be available on our episode tomorrow, so make sure you tune in, subscribe. You don't want to miss this episode. I'm telling you, it is really, really good. So much data, so much information in there to kind of help guide you into 2020 and give you a little insight into what really matters. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure you subscribe, give us 5 stars, tell your friends all about us. My name's James Azar. You're listening to the CyberHub Engage podcast. Merry Christmas, happy holidays, happy Hanukkah, happy Kwanzaa, and we're out.